Hi there, Randy Green here, and welcome to a little update on my Higher Awareness Lifestyle channel, which have now got a new name. And you will know the whole project has been changed into a whole Changemaker project channel as well, where I'm going to focus on once we're done with winter time, because this is also why I'm putting this one in here, and then I'll be silent for a while until spring. But there, I'm going to focus on what we call the Changemaker material and how we're going to work as changemakers in the world. And that will imply, of course, our participation in the base program and what we can change there and what not to change and what that means. And all of these different ways into which we can put our, what we could call the higher order awareness into some kind of transformational processes within the base program, whatever that means and whatever that entails, because it all depends on how far we can push it. And as always, it's not about preserving what is, it is about getting as much as possible to do the transition, because this is where we're heading now. We must do the transition or there will be no future for this planet. You hear it all, it's all over the place now. It's all over the place. Even the politicians are talking about it now. So we are now on the same page, everybody all the way through and through. Either we change or we die. That's just how it's going to go. So this is just putting it as it is. So those of you who are still in denial and are thinking this is just temporary and it will shift and tomorrow they will say something else, you are in for a bit of a rough awakening, because this is not going to happen. We have crossed all of the boundaries of what we were supposed to do. And we had the last call out in COP26 where we got the last warning. So you even got it with the whole dinosaur thing that we're playing out there. Are you going to die like the dinosaurs, right? So because you didn't change your ways, and that did not lead to any grand changes. So we are in it all the way through and through on all of the possibilities that are within this reality field. Now we change, or this is just going to go into the futures that quite a lot of the humans that have made that journey already are coming back and have come back to try and change, and unfortunately have discovered that this is not the time where they will succeed in that one, and they will then shift into other possibilities and other reality fields where there are versions of our planet that has a high potentiality to do the transition. So this sector, not so much. So this is what we're in. That's the mess we're in. And for those of you who are aware, while you are dreaming, you will see how you are participating in these other realities, which I am as well. And it's a little bit confusing because in these realities, the energies are different. Some of them are completely artificial and under the grace and whatever, but these are not the ones I'm talking about here, because we had a relooping, and that's what has shifted, why I'm shifting perspective again. And it makes it difficult for those of you who are still in linear time and thinking that yesterday is the same as tomorrow, and today is just in between yesterday and tomorrow and will always be the same, because this is not the case anymore, at least for the 30% that have been relooped. You will find a link to that newsletter from the whole Changemaker News Google site I've made for the purpose right now, because I don't know if I'm going to continue to make what we call a newsletter, but I just made that Google site to put out. It's kind of what you call an intermediary or interim or a temporary platform where I can play with some ideas and see how it's received inside the reality field as within the virtual reality setup that we call the internet. So it's just kind of where I seed in ideas, and then I see what the ramifications are of the feedback systems that will come from that one. And that's why I'm not putting it on my two main websites. So the whole academy, I'm still working on that one. I'm now shifting it into being more and more oriented right now. I'm working on the second pillar with the new reality programs, which you can see this step into that level of understanding, the higher order systemic energetic awareness play in, because that's where we need to transit into. We need to transit into being able to operate on the systemic level and not just the psychic energetic level. And the difference here is the psychic energetic level. That is what I'll call the psychology, psychic energetic, for those of us who have activated. We are no longer working within, sorry about that, working within the spectrum of psychology, because psychology links up to traditional perception of the human mind and emotions as a joint field. And these are the three lower fields. So psychology is within normal human-based program understanding. Psychic energetic are what we call the psychic energetic challenges, the higher order psychology for those of us who have or are beginning to do the transition. And we have our own challenges. And my game or plan was all along to have the higher order psychic energetic or whole advanced psychotherapy page running, where I would talk to people and work with people and assist people in their different processes. But I've been doing that for 10 years now, and it's both partially due to the relooping, but it's also partially to the fact that over the course of 10 years I'm talking to people, the ramifications for me after each sessions are getting worse and worse and worse, because people are simply not knowledgeable of their higher levels of the energy field yet, and things are accumulating there due to the constant changes in our reality field, the collapse of fields, the relooping, the dying of the sun, and the old cycles that are reverting back into our reality field and are there entering into people's fields on the levels they are not aware of. And that means the original energy system. So too many are still centered in the lower fields, the psychological level of their emotional field and mental field, because they haven't cleared that. They have not made it permeable so they can be perceived beyond. So they're still in their normal human personality matrix. And then they are making calls to me, asking me, how do I do this? And then when I am in these calls, I am connecting to their high order energy system, because that's where I have my center point of perception. And that means that I will encounter what is there, and that does not look good, people. So therefore I'm just saying, well, for now I am shifting it into the systemic energetic awareness, because that's a different set of information I want to work with as well. And I wanted to work with it. I've been wanting to work with that ever since I was a kid, and let me explain why. It's not that I have stopped forever to work with people, but you need to up your game if we are going to have what we could say purposeful conversations that even matter. So I'm thinking, just to tie a bow on that one, I'm thinking of actually making training programs instead, which you will then buy and do as self-studies, and then perhaps include email sessions or something, because I'm hit less by email sessions than the one-on-one conversations over Skype. There I get hit really hard, because there you really open up and you share a lot of stuff. And as you open up and share, that's where I'll be able to see things, and that's where it can jump, because what you look at, you give energy, and what you give energy will then connect to your energy field. Also due to a feature I have that's called imprinting, that goes with the 6-dimensional awareness. So as long as you're just in your 5th and your 4th, you will not imprint. So therefore you will not be hit to the same degree. So these are some of the challenges. And of course, it is sad that it's not possible. It's still I feel a responsibility for talking to you guys out there, because I know you need these conversations. But that is technically also a feature of the lower level personality matrix. You need to share, you need to get feedback, you need to have someone to go to. And this is where you need to shift. You just need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet and mature and figure out how to deal with these things on your own, because this is going to be more and more individualized. But to tie a bow, again, as I said, I'm with the training programs. What would be the ideas of these? Well, over the course of 10 years and the many, many people I've been talking to, you're kind of working on the same issue. I can almost do a frequently asked question in these training programs, because you're centered around the same things. You're orbiting around the same issues. And the same issues are, as always, change your life, change your diets, do the exercise, get your body in check, instigate instant changes, not, oh, tomorrow, get that over that one, do it today, not tomorrow, fix what needs to be fixed. Get your finances in order, get your life in order. I know it takes time, and many of you, it's a huge thing to change these things, but that's the reason why it's so difficult for so many of you to change these things that are so simple when it comes down to it. It's just a matter of will and diligence and constant will to want to change things and then do what has to be done, is because of the enormous amount of distortion you have in your field, because of the enormous amount of energetic parasites. So that's the problem. The problem is you're not doing your energy work, because if you were doing your energy work, you would get more clarity of what you need to do, and you would have that moment in time where you would go into flux, where you would go into flow, where you would be able to make these changes. Yes, you will then have the polarity kick in the butt where the counter forces will come in, and then you would clear and clear and clear, and then you would push it to the next level and get more momentum. Because that's why we're doing the clearing work. We do it to get momentum, so we get clarity, so we know what to do, so we can instigate the changes. And that's part of the change maker. And that's also one of the reasons why the first time around the future humans did not make it, because they didn't know these dynamics. So that's part of the activation for those of us who are here doing it all over again. Some of us of the older ages and have done it many times before. I am right now, due to the relooping, I am centered back into, I would say 13,000 years ago, 12,500, 13,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, something around that, in that vicinity. And there, it's during the last ice age. And I'm centered there. I'm kind of face locked into that one, seeing myself into that perspective on working on ice. It's on Antarctica. It's not just because it is. I know the feeling that the entire planet is covered in ice. I know why it's covered in ice. At that point, it is an outpost. It's a workstation. The perception of me being there is as part of an outpost or a workstation. We are connected to Mars. So there's also that at that point in time, we were still connected to what we call the fourth dimension. So we had that direct connection between the different planets on our system that were also working as storage units. At that time, everything on Mars, it's not on the surface, it's on what we call in the planet itself. It's underground. And the silos that I'm here accessing are also what we call in the ground, but they're open up to the air, and we have different crafts flying by, and it's completely different Earth. And the question is it in the past or is it in the future? Because the whole covering of ice on our planet, snowball Earth, has been there many times. It's nothing unusual. That's what happens when the sun does what it does. It goes into its burning off cycle, literally burning off everything like the dinosaurs, everything on the surface. And that changes the magnetic field around the planet. It rings a different tone, and that allows for comets to enter. And that's kind of where the dinosaurs lost it the last time around. So this is nothing unusual. It has happened many times. You see all the craters on the moon and on Mars, what have you. Once the magnetic field reaches that point where we are now, that opens up for influx of heavenly bodies that normally can't get through. So this is part of the change. When the sun changes, that's the end of a cycle. And then it has its different features. It has its different phases. And if you want to get a little bit more scientific background on that one, I'm saying it's the same thing we're saying, but as a supportive and as a different angle on the same idea, work from what we call a more scientific oriented level. You can check suspicious observers that are also talking about these grand cycles where the Earth shifts its magnetic field, and it's not just a pole shift, it is more than that. And with that changes the surface of our planet. And the most prominent one is we're not just heading towards an ice age. We will have the burning ground first, and then we'll get into the ice age. That's the dynamics. That's how it's always been done. That's how it's going to do this time around. So all the things we're seeing now are just to play out. That's the forerunning events that will lead to the upcoming changes in our world, and those of us who are prepping to do that. So that's why I've been relooped to there, so I kind of understand this is what we're heading towards. These are the dynamics. This is what we need to do. These are the programs that need to be cleared out. But that's my level of work. And it has, of course, been done to try and get the original construction programs back online to just do what we call a reseeding, where there will be a 6-cycle root race on this planet. That's the attempt with relooping me to get me to that point where I can talk to Mother, as I call the augmented original interface system of the original construction, and try to convince her to just do a reseeding. But it's not possible due to the breaking down of all the technologies that normally supports a reseeding. They are no longer there. These crystal pillars has, due to the last 12,000 years and the ways that the hijackers have been misusing our planet, or the reality field construction, then everything is crumbling, falling apart. The original bodies that were in stasis are falling apart. The templates are falling apart. The energy systems are too distorted. So it's not going to be easy to do any form of reseeding, what we could say. But the dynamics have been put in play. She is playing the program. And that's part of the 30% that's been relooped, because that's part of that program where that points out the ones that has the largest possibility rate to do a reseeding. And we are now being pushed into these exit programs, or what we call transit programs, where we are going to do the transition with who and what we are connected to, the lineages that we came from. And we will then go into our individualized programs. And that's why it's no point in actually doing sessions with me, because this is what I would tell you. And you would say, well, what am I to do then? You are to do your damn energy work, so you get to know your configuration. Don't ask me what to do. Ask yourself what to do. Ask yourself, where are you? What are you? Can you do this? And then you will begin to ask the real questions. Instead of asking me, ask yourself and get the answers from who and what you are. And if you do the transformative energy system, the transition science classes, there are 7 classes there, you will get all the information you need. And that's just the sciences. And then you need to figure out how to put it into implementation. That's some of the ideas I'm working with the training programs, and saying, okay, these are the steps for implementation, because implementation has always been the difficulty in whatever change that we're talking about. One thing is to study that you need to change your diet, or you need to become more healthy, and you need to exercise. And the other thing is to put it into implementation, to make it part of your life. That's where the cord snaps every time, because one thing is, yeah, I want to do this, and then the whole, I'll do tomorrow, and then tomorrow you're too tired. So what I would recommend to you right here and now is that when you think about, I want to do this, do it now. If you want to say, oh, I want to start running, go out and run now. So you put it in motion. So you tell your energy system, when you think that thought, you do it right now. Simply as saying, oh, I need to pee, go down and pee. Oh, I need to poop, go down and poop, or go out and poop, or whatever. Oh, I'm hungry, eat. I need to do this. Do it. Fix it. So that you get yourself into training with not doing the prolonging, with not doing the whole, there is a specific word for that, procrastination. Do it now. If you want to make changes, do it now. Put it in motion right away, so you recondition your energy system and your lower fields to instantly following that. When you want to shift, when you want to change, you do it right now. When you say, oh, I want to do energy work, do it right now. When we have had a conversation, many of you that had a sessions with me, we're talking about doing stuff, I always say, do it when you put down the phone. Go and do it now, not tomorrow, because there you have slept and the energies are off and you've been wiped by the cube technology. So whatever we want to do, we learn to do it right now, and we learn to work effectively and efficiently within the short span of time we have. And the rest of the time, we go into what we call a semi-meditative state, where we preserve our energies and learn to work within the reality setting with what's possible. So we know the times where we can work effectively. And why is that? And why does that become even more important? Because the magnetic field is now damaged. And that means that there will be pockets where there are holes in the magnetic field. And if you jump into, if it kind of, you're saying the magnetic field and we're seeing it depicted on YouTube or on the internet or wherever, and it has this simple build-up. It's not that simple. It's actually layers of fields that are upon each other that kind of goes together as different currents that are connected as fields. If you take an apple and then you just have a lot of fields that goes from the core in all directions. There are so many fields and they are going on both latitude and longitude. You know that one. But there are so minuscule, literally like every second there is a new field. Let me put it that way. If you look at a two-dimensional diagram, or you could do 3 dimensions where you have time as the fourth, which is inaccurate. But if you have these 3 dimensions and you in between that, these actually would be better doing a cubit, because it's actually in that square form. What's in the middle of the square in the cubit, then you have everything that's filled out there, even though you can't see it, it's part of some field. So air is part of a field. Light is part of a field. Atoms have their different fields that are connected to. Protons have their fields they are connected to, and all of the sublevels of the proton. Neutron, all of the sublevels of the neutron. Electrons, all of the subfields of the electrons. The sky around, the cloud around the nucleus of the atom are composed of many little fields. So we have fields within fields within fields within fields. The same with the magnetic field. And as the sun is shifting, then what's happening first are all the fields that are connected to the sun. And that's why when you hear out there and saying, oh yeah, we had a solar or a CME, that a coronal mass ejection, or we have a solar particle storm or eruption that blasted on the other side of the sun, the back side of the sun or the south side of the sun or whatever, away from us. We will not be affected by the solar flares. Yeah, not as a direct impact, but it's still rippling into all the fields that are connected to our magnetic field. So therefore we will get it, but we'll get it in a more subtle way. And then instead of having this massive impact as a huge blast, as a flare that we would have as a solar storm coming our way, it will then ripple into our entire magnetic field, and then it will take a day's time where it accumulates. And then those of us who live up in the north or in the south poles, that energy will accumulate there. And in the south, in the southern hemisphere, it will be shown as what we call enormously erratic weather and more heat. And up here in the north, that will eventually also turn into heat. But right now it's just turning into storms and hurricanes and very disrupted weather patterns that are what we call in alignment with what our type of reality field plays out, or weather systems up here in the north. A little bit weird way to say it. But this is what's happening. And at the same time, it's also affecting our emotional and mental fields and our biofields, even though science says, well, we are not affected by whatever's going on in the sun. Of course we are, because it affects the magnetic field, and we are living on a planet that is imbued with the magnetic field. And our electrons and our protons and our neutrons, even though the neutrons have no charge, but that's the 0.0 field that's connected there, technically the quantum field, which science haven't discovered yet. Well, of course we are affected. It might not be complete physical standing there when we have our solar storm hits the magnetic field and it ripples into and creates erratic weather or whatever it's doing. It might not be measurable, but it is subtle and it is accumulating. And these are some of the things that are changing the human molecular system, because our planet, the energies of our planet are changing as well. So that's affecting biodiversity. That's affecting our physical forms. That's affecting everything around us. And we need to take that into consideration in our energy work. And what are the effects of this? That the sun is now radiating out what we call an older version of energy, because that is what the sun is. It has gone back these 13,000 years. So why is it radiating that type of energy? That's part of the relooping as well. Not that we could say that. Okay, let me give a little bit of explanation here. Aside from the 30% at the highest viability rate, which means we have been relooped back to the point in the holographic network where our templated energy system had its highest viability rate that is compatible with our current type of energy system. So we have been relooped to match that earlier nodal point in the holographic network of our reality field. So it bridges into our current state of who and what we are. And by that allows us to integrate these viable genetics, but of course with all of the different energies and part of the energy system, everything that goes with that one. And that will rise up a lot of residual energies, which we then need to clear out, because as we activate that older level and it comes in contact with our present level, due to the higher level of distortion we have now that we had compared to back then everything will activate, and that takes time to clear out. And let me put it that way, after the relooping on 10/10, because that was on October 10th, it took me 24 hours to clean up the effects of it. 24 hours of intensive energy work, constantly coming in rounds. Got one level, then I had 5 minutes where I could kind of breathe a little bit, and wham, the next level came in. I had to clear that one, and wham, the next level came in. And it was just like going from one nightmare to another. So that was the level that had to be cleared, and all the levels that went through it. And I'm not saying I'm done, because we never really are, but these are some things that happens when you get relooped. That's one of the downside with the grays that have been relooping our reality field without people knowing it. And then they had accumulated all of these residual energies in the higher levels or in the original energy system. And that is what has fed back or feedback loop into, as a feedback loop into what we call, the current type of physical form as well as the energy system. And that's what's part of distorting the higher level energy systems to such a degree that the viability or the genetics with a viability rate are no longer suitable for harvesting, seriously, because of that constant relooping, as they have destroyed code stream after code stream after code stream, and then reloop to try and get into a new code stream where they could continue their artificial harvesting programs. And that's one of the reasons why the original construction technologies are breaking down, because they've been doing that. So they have dismantled our reality field in the attempt to get as much profit as possible. Sounds something that you can recognize from within our reality field, the big businesses that have ruined our world because they want to get as much profit as possible. They have literally shited all over the environment to get as much profit as possible. Sounds familiar? They don't have it from strangers. Okay. So in that understanding, we also, with the magnetic field that is changing, we also understand that there are these different inclusions in the magnetic field that has pockets of older time, and we have pockets of future time, and we have pocket of distorted time, and we have all sorts of weird pockets that are now ringing into our magnetic field. And at the same time, all the fields that are connected to the sun are now aligning to an earlier state of the sun, because the sun is in its decay cycle. It has shedded off all of its density 2 energies and now begins to shed off the density 1 energies that were recalibrated to initiate the sequence of activation that we've been living within the last 13,000 years. And as that one is falling apart due to the new grand cycle and all the things that have been going on here, that means that the feature of the sun is now changing into what it were before it got recalibrated to allow for the Holocene, or the last 12,000 years of a specific type of sun radiation that has allowed for our planet to spark back to life. So the sun, let's call it a she, is now going back to her original configuration where she goes dormant. And that means she's shutting everything off, and then it just goes dormant, and then we'll just wait for the next ignition of the original constructions to recreate artificial reality fields. And these are the artificial in the good ways that will then allow for reseeding with the type of genetics that have done the transition. So the sun goes dormant and awaits the call out to ignite again, but that can only happen once our planet has done the same cycle. And those of us who've done the transition, we will stand on the snowball Earth, on the ice caps of the planet, in the future, have made it there. And then the sun will kind of be part of what we call the planet will be scanned. The sun will be scanned. The other planets of our solar system will be scanned. And then it ignites all over again, but on a completely different level and in a completely different setting. That's the original construction. And that's been towed out into the progressive world. So it will ignite there, but not here in this segment. or in this sector. So that's what's happening. So that's part of the ability for the sun. It is shedding off that artificial construction that were made to allow for our planet to come to life. And in that process actually burned off both Mercury and Venus because it needed to be so hot to get our planet to go from snowball Earth into be a viable planet with life forms. And when Mars was the one that had that configuration as being the bearing planet of life forms, our Earth was scorched in that process because then the sun were radiating even more energy. And the same one was Maldak, was the one that was the planet where life forms were, including when you say, well, then goes further out into Jupiter or Saturn. No, because Jupiter was then, that's the second sun. It has been recalibrated into being what we call a gaseous planet, but actually originally was a sun. So we had two suns in our system that each had 6 planets orbiting around it. So that's the natural configuration. Okay, so this is the reconstruction of everything that's happening, but it's going to be pulled out accordingly with the energy systems that were set for that configuration, etc., etc. You can do the math that everything is now shutting down. So in the transition, for those of us who have the viable consciousness genetics, we are to reconnect to our original racial grid, our original racial lineages, our original configuration, and who and what we used to be, so that we have not what we could call the energy system and configuration that were in alignment with the reactivation and the reseeding the last 13,000 years. And again, we were hijacked there. So therefore, the reseeding was changed into something else. And that's the problem. It was not a natural occurrence for our original energy systems of the different races that have existed inside the solar system. It was changed into this type of current form, this type of current vessel by the hijacking races and their what we call the density 2 regress races, as I call them, as kind of a joint group, because there are many different factions and they are spread out into different species, of which we know they are the mammal species, the reptoid species, the avian species, and the insectoid species. These are, to shorten it down, the sum of the hijackers. And they have their hierarchy, of course, and they have been part of this system driving what we call the human civilizations from their levels, acting as the quote unquote gods, where humans have been part of that whole setup, serving the gods to be part of whatever factory setting that these races have been playing out here. But they're also in trouble. So many of them have taken off. And either way, for me, as I'm seeing things now, and when we talk about progression work, and we talk about the older type of genetics, you have the storyline and the understanding and the what we call the background information for that one. You have that in my 6 books: The Souls of Humanity, the Understanding the Old Stellar Souls, Tarology, Modern History. These books I've written, wrote them between 2014 and 2020, ending with the whole philosophy book. And there we had the huge shift that literally where you could say the top of the hierarchy of the hijacking or colonizing races pulled out, because they were seeing on all of their prospective future timelines, they were seeing the collapse coming. So they had no further need to be here. So that's also part of it. And that plunged us into the polarity of that one, because with the highest level of the colonizing races gone, well, then the other side of the LPO3 races, the dark ones, could come in and take over, which they did, and we have seen the ripple effect of that one. And we're still not out in the clear, but there has been motion going on there as well. There has someone who thought they could come in and take over. They have not been permitted to do so. And where we have the parallel universal matrix and some of the things that they have done, the Arcturians and what they have done, etc., etc. So this is not a simple matter of, oh yeah, they have done this and then everything is in the clear. It's always, then someone's going, then someone is coming in. Then something is leaving, then something is surfacing. Then something is clear, then another thing comes in. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, because it has so many layers to whatever. So if one field collapses, then another one kicks in, often on a lower state of energy. And that's the problem. That's also why we need to keep our energy work. Because when we talk about the energy work, and we talk about what are we to achieve with the energy work, well, that is to maintain your energy system, because as everything is collapsing around us and everything goes for the lowest point of energy, that's entropy. That's the law of our system. Even the electrons do so. They might gather energy to get to a higher position in the cloud, but if it can't get there and latch on to the high null point of that holographic level, then it will naturally fall back. And as it falls back, it will emit a lot of energy. That's kinetic energy. That's telling you what the sun is doing whenever it bursts off. It is shedding off energies as it tried to recreate itself, but couldn't, and then it falls back into a lower state of energy. And that's why it's getting hotter, because it's trying to recalibrate. It can't, but it's kind of the death process. It goes up to a higher level, and then because there's no density 2 fields to connect to, then it has to fall back, and then it falls back to an even lower point. And then we put a little sad analogy here, because it's similar when people have, after a long time of terminal illness, sometimes it happens that people get really clear. Also, if they have Alzheimer's or something, sometimes they get really, really clear, as if, completely, as if the illness is in a remission, and then they die 2 days later. So there is this last attempt as a trying to get energy, and then because they push this last amount of energy for clarity, then it falls back to an even lower state. And that's also what has happened with the relooping. And that's also why when we talk about the enormous amount of residuals that have come with it, that are part of that level of residual energy buildup after each relooping that has led to the current state that we are in. So this is also when we talk about why have I kind of been forced to take down the whole advanced psychotherapy, although it's a brilliant idea and it should be there. That is simply because now we all need to learn to do this, and we need to learn to do it our way and not rely on anybody else, because it's in any ways or forms, we have to learn this by ourselves. And it's so nice that we have someone to go to that can support us and mirror back to us and tell us that we're on the right path. But that might just be in that moment in time. And then because you've been in contact with me that vibrates on a high level of energy, you might have a surface of a lot of things you then have to clear out. And then you might not be in a good place anymore. Then your whole ideas of who and what you are might be scattered, because you will then discover how much you actually are dealing with. And if you then go into denial or you can't see it, well, then all that activated energy has to go somewhere. And that typically ends up in my field, where I then have to clear out things that are not being cleared out at all, but just the current version of it, because then that field might collapse, but then another one arises that leaves you in a state where you then have to learn to deal with that. So you might as well just learn to do it on your own, instead of using me as your igniting rod to see what you need to do. And then you need to become that lightning rod in yourself, so you learn how to do the energy work. Because this is where we ask ourselves with the systemic energetic awareness. This is where we align ourselves with who and what we originally were. And this is where we face the challenges of what it actually means to do the energy work, not just on the psychic energetic level that feeds into our personality matrix and makes us feel in a certain way where this is oh so exciting, but actually understand this is where we mature into a very, very complex reality with very, very complex challenges. And there are no easy solutions. There are no, oh yes, I'll just do this, then everything will be good. Because our world is crumbling around us. So what is going to be good here? And that's part of the resilience and part of what it means to be a change maker, where you learn to be both a chaos pilot and a path cutter, and you learn to transform reality and learn to deal with what is there. And then when I made the learn to live in a fourth dimension, that will be for the majority of you that are part of what we call the base program, the challenges you have in the future. That's part of that material. And then there are the group that's going to do the transition. So we are not all on the same page anymore. That's what happened on October 10th. We are now finally being divided, and we're going to have the next division on November 11th. So, and then we have the last one, so to speak, this year, because this is the year of choice. 2022 is number 6, so it's the year of choice. Where are you? What were you supposed to do? And we talked about that in the beginning of the year as well. And many of you've been aware of this, and yet you have not done what you needed to do to be able to consciously do the choice that you should have done, and instead it is now being done for you by the reality dynamics. Including we had the enhanced humans that were trying to put in their new reality programs, which I talk about in the reality program 1 and 2 course material, and discovered that the reality field construction is just too damaged now. So we are on different paths of the work. And in that, the sciences of how to transform energy, the sciences of how to recalibrate yourself, and the sciences of how to change your molecular state is now what is in play. And for that, you still need to do the transitional work, the course material. You still need to learn the sciences of your template system. You still need to learn to do the basic energy work. You still need to learn all of these things. You still need to learn the sciences behind a reality, because I made even though the reality program courses were mainly from the point of the matrix of change, I've still generalized it in so you could understand this is how all reality programs work. So the systemic energetic awareness, which is what used to be the whole advanced psychotherapy page, is now changed into what were the processes and the challenges of those of us who are going to do the transition, because the transition is not just about being part of the reseeding. It's also of being part of opening up to what we could call the adjacent realities, where some of us are going to traverse into. So we are now preparing for the next civilizations that we're going to be part of, as we have always done. This is how you shift. If you want to leave one system, you begin to align yourself with the system you want to enter into. So this is also what I'm doing, both being so far back in time at the last ice age, but from that point on the holographic network, I can do the polarity to the similar point in the other end, which is the 6th cycle humans that were supposed to be seeded. So that's some of the things I will play a little bit with as well. Because we know the 5th cycle human configuration and the 6th cycle human configuration that was supposed to unfold in our reality field are not going to happen inside this world as it is, but it's going to unfold perhaps in what we could say the other versions of our Earth that has been dormant but might spark to life. And with that, the reseeding will be there, because there are many different potentialities of Earths. As the sun does what it does, it cannot recreate itself inside this reality, but perhaps it can do in a similar adjacent type of world that is now being prepped and are played out as artificial programs. That's what Mother's doing right now. And it's confusing to be part of these dynamics for those of us who are doing the transition, because we are living not only here, but in different versions of ourselves. And we are going in and out of these different timelines, both within this reality field, but also during dream time. Although I'm trying to do my very best to take down the old programs and the old technologies, because that's distorted as well. And you see, when the hijackers came here, they knew how to tamper with the original Mother program. So this is also some of the things that needs to be cleared out. Anyways, we all have our own purposes. So this is, again, when we talk about the stages that we're going into now, is a stage of triage. And you will see that within the base program as well. It is no longer everybody can be salvaged and saved. It is now what can be saved, what must be saved, and how do we focus our energy and attention on the things that is salvable, that has a potentiality for a future continuation. What must we cut loose? And that will happen within businesses, that will happen within the whole base program setting of all of their surplus things that have been created here as part of our overloaded, overpopulated world. There is a lot of stuff we need to let go of, and then go back to more what we call basics, go back into what is most important, minimalize our use of energy, our attempts to buy stuff, consuming, consumption, all of these things, resource allocation must be what is most important, and not just to fill out the gaps of our emotional emptiness and sexual desires, or whatever it is, of all sorts of entertainment that has been produced to create profit and to earn money, and in all of these ways have used our planetary energies in all sorts of wrongful ways that were in alignment with the lower races that swarmed in as the higher ones left and were not really here. And they began that retraction some 50 years ago when we had the Greys and the Cetas coming in from other systems. They began to pull out and were less interested in being here, because they knew the moment the gates opened for them, well, then it goes in one direction. So they were already beginning to pull out. And then these races have come in, and they have, with them, have high levels of insectoids and high levels of really nasty avians come in, and scavengers and all sorts of lower level of races. And they have consumed and taken over as many of the clone vessels as they could, and changed them into being producers of what they needed to fulfill their addictions and their need of different types of energies. They're just raiding through systems as they do, and that's why they're called scavengers. They come in and eat what no longer is viable, and then they chew everything up, and that's part of what we call the end process of a segment. Anyways, there are much more to this, and I'll be working with some of these challenges in the New Reality program next set of courses, or the New Reality Sciences, more correctly, the New Reality Sciences, where I will work with the challenges ahead of us, the challenges from the sun, the challenges from our earth, the challenges from the systems that we're going to head towards, as well as the challenges of the gate systems and the opening and closing of these gates. That's 4 courses that I'm going to make there. And then that will then tie into what type of businesses can we actually create, and what are the sciences that are most important for us to focus on as change makers. Because as change makers, we are now going to focus on how we're going to make sure that the base program is not turning into complete chaos. That will be one group that will work on that one. And then there'll be the other one to create the sciences and the businesses and the requirements to do the transition. And that's another group that will also focus on that one. And there will be groups that will focus on, are we going to colonize the moon, or are we going to colonize Mars? So the kick is off. It's been kicked off. So it's been done. We are there now. Those of us who are doing the transition, those of us who are working for a future for anyone, we are now being relooped. We have been recalibrated. Those of you who have managed to clear yourself, you will be on target. You will begin your mission. Those of you who have not managed to that one, you will have a lot of clearing work to do, and you'll have to do it very, very quickly if you are going to catch the new code streams, because that's part of the transition. You don't get second chances. You either nail it or you don't. So this is part of the evac programs, because only the ones that can work that way, that can work in this turbulent environment of inclusions of energy and chaos and distortion, will make it. So that's the new challenge for most of us. Thank you.